The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the rolling hills of the countryside, painting the landscape with hues of amber and crimson. The hum of nature filled the air, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, and the distant sound of a stream winding its way through the valley. This was far removed from the bustling chaos of the city, where deadlines and meetings reigned supreme. For Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur behind Tesla and SpaceX, this serene setting offered a rare moment of peace. His sleek Tesla Model X sat parked by the side of a narrow, winding road. The car's polished surface reflected the fiery tones of the setting sun, but all was not as perfect as it seemed. Inside, Elon reclined in the driver's seat, his head tilted back, eyes closed, trying to empty his mind of the constant noise of his ambitious projects. But even here, he couldn't escape his thoughts. Visions of Mars colonies, self-driving cars, and a future powered by sustainable energy swirled in his mind. A faint clicking sound broke his reverie. He frowned, sitting upright as a thin wisp of smoke drifted from the hood of the car. "Not now," he muttered, stepping out of the vehicle. He scanned the empty road stretching in both directions. No other cars, no houses, not even a signal on his phone. The countryside's beauty now seemed less comforting and more isolating. Elon bent down to examine the car, his sharp mind racing through potential issues with the electrical system. But without the right tools, there was little he could do. The sound of shuffling footsteps drew his attention. Looking up, Elon saw an elderly man walking toward him. The man moved with a slight stoop, a worn canvas bag slung over one shoulder. His face was weathered but kind, his eyes carrying a glint of sharp intelligence. He wore simple clothes, a faded flannel shirt, jeans, and sturdy work boots, but there was an undeniable air of confidence about him. "Having some trouble there?" the man asked, his voice low and steady. Elon hesitated, his natural caution surfacing. "Yeah, the car's electrical system seems to have an issue. Not the best place for a breakdown." The man nodded, setting his bag down. "Mind if I take a look? I used to work with electrical systems far more complicated than this." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Really? What kind of systems?" The man smiled faintly. "NASA, 30 years. I've seen my fair share of wiring and circuits." Elon blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Was this man serious? Yet something about his calm demeanor and steady gaze made it hard to doubt him. "All right," Elon said, stepping aside. "Let's see what you've got." The man opened his bag, revealing a modest collection of tools: pliers, electrical tape, and a coil of wire. Kneeling beside the car, he began working with quiet precision. Elon watched, intrigued by the practiced ease with which the man moved. Every action seemed deliberate, almost as if his hands were guided by muscle memory from years of experience. "You're Elon Musk, aren't you?" the man asked without looking up. "Yes," Elon replied, surprised. "And you are?" "David Harper," the man said simply, adjusting a wire. "You've got big ideas, Mr. Musk. Ideas that can change the world. But I wonder, do you ever think about the people behind the scenes? The ones who keep things running so your vision can take flight?" The question caught Elon off guard. He didn't respond immediately, instead watching as David tightened the connection and checked the system with practiced efficiency. After a few more minutes, David stood up, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Try it now," he said. Elon climbed back into the car and pressed the start button. The engine purred to life, smooth and steady, as if nothing had ever been wrong. He looked through the windshield at David, a mix of gratitude and curiosity in his eyes. "That's incredible," Elon said, stepping out of the car. "How much do I owe you?" David shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "Nothing. Just doing what I believe is right. Life has given me plenty, and I've always felt it's only fair to give back when I can." Elon studied the man before him, sensing there was more to him than met the eye. "You know, David, your skills and experience, they're not something you find every day. How would you feel about coming to work for me at SpaceX?" David froze, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to discern whether Elon was serious. "You don't need an old man like me," he said finally. "SpaceX is for the young, the brilliant minds shaping the future." Elon's lips curled into a confident smile. "You're wrong, David. What we need are people who've lived through challenges, who know how to solve problems others can't even see. Think about it. We're building the future, and I think you can help us do it better." David didn't respond right away, his gaze drifting to the horizon where the sun dipped below the hills. Finally, he nodded, a faint but genuine smile breaking across his face. "All right, let's see what the future holds." The hum of the Tesla Model X filled the air as it cruised along the quiet country road, its sleek design a striking contrast against the rustic backdrop. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was contemplative. Elon Musk, seated behind the wheel, stole occasional glances at David Harper, who sat in the passenger seat, gazing out at the passing fields. There was a silence between them, not awkward, but heavy with unspoken thoughts. "So, David," Elon began, his tone curious but gentle, "how did you end up here? A man with your skills. I can't imagine this was the path you planned." David turned to him, his eyes thoughtful, carrying the weight of years gone by. "It wasn't," he admitted, "but life rarely follows the plans we make." He shifted in his seat, the leather creaking softly beneath him. "I was at NASA for over 3 decades, worked on some of the most ambitious projects of our time. Satellites, shuttle systems, even some of the early Mars rover designs. Every day felt like I was contributing to something greater than myself." Elon nodded, captivated. "Sounds incredible. So, what happened?" David's gaze drifted back to the window, his expression shadowed by a quiet sadness. "Her name was Margaret, my wife. We met when I was just a young engineer, full of ambition and naivete. She grounded me, kept me focused on what truly mattered." He paused, his voice softening. "Then one day, she got sick. It started with small things, fatigue, a cough that wouldn't go away. We thought it was nothing at first, but the diagnosis came, and it hit us like a freight train. A rare autoimmune disease, progressive, incurable." Elon remained silent, letting the words sink in. "At first, I tried to balance everything," David continued. "Work at NASA, the long hours, the late nights, and then rushing home to care for her. But as her condition worsened, it became clear that she needed me more than the space program did. So, I made a choice." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I left NASA, gave up my career, my dreams, everything I had worked for, to be with her, to make sure she wasn't alone in her final years." Elon's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "That must have been incredibly difficult." David nodded. "It was, but I don't regret it. Not for a second. Margaret was my world. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing." He sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "When she passed, though, it felt like I'd lost not just her, but myself. I had no direction, no purpose. So I wandered, did odd jobs, helped strangers when I could, just trying to find something." Elon glanced at him, his expression one of deep respect. "You're a remarkable man, David. Most people wouldn't have the strength to make the choices you did." David chuckled softly, though there was little humor in it. "Strength? I don't know about that. I did what needed to be done. That's all." The car fell silent again. The only sound the quiet were the engine and the occasional chirp of crickets outside. After a moment, Elon spoke, his voice firm but empathetic. "David, you've given so much to others. It's time you gave something back to yourself. You have experience and wisdom that the world needs, even if it doesn't realize it. Come work with me at SpaceX. Let's build something incredible together." David turned to him, his brow furrowed. "Elon, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just an old man. The industry has moved on. I wouldn't know where to start." Elon shook his head, a determined smile on his face. "You're wrong. You have exactly what we need. SpaceX isn't just about technology. It's about vision, about pushing boundaries. And that takes more than cutting-edge software or advanced engineering. It takes perspective. People who've lived through challenges and know how to think outside the box. People like you." David hesitated, the uncertainty clear in his eyes. "I don't know." "Think about it this way," Elon pressed. "All those years you spent at NASA, all the knowledge and skills you developed, they're still there. And now you have something even more valuable, the wisdom that comes from experience. The industry needs that, David. I need that." David stared at him, the wheels in his mind turning. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, I'll give it a shot. But don't expect miracles." Elon grinned. "I don't need miracles, David. I just need you." The Tesla rolled on, the countryside giving way to the distant glow of the city. For the first time in years, David felt a spark of something he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he was ready to find out. The bustling halls of SpaceX hummed with energy and determination. Young engineers, some barely in their mid-20s, darted between workstations, their faces alight with the glow of screens displaying intricate designs and simulations. To David Harper, it was a world both familiar and foreign. He had once thrived in such environments, but decades had passed since his days at NASA. Now, standing amidst the sea of innovation, he felt like a relic of the past. David's arrival had sparked curiosity, but not all of it was welcoming. Whispers followed him as he moved through the office. "Is that the NASA guy?" one engineer murmured. "I heard he's been out of the game for years," another said. "What can he possibly teach us that we don't already know?" A third voice chimed in. David pretended not to notice, but the doubt lingered in the air, heavy and oppressive. His first few days were challenging. The software tools were far more advanced than anything he'd used before, and the pace at which the team operated was almost dizzying. He spent most of his time quietly observing, trying to acclimate to this new world. One afternoon, as David sat at his workstation reviewing technical documents, he overheard a group of engineers discussing a problem with a spacecraft's power system. The launch was just weeks away, but the module's power grid was unstable, and no one could pinpoint the issue. "We've run every diagnostic," one engineer said, frustration evident in his tone. "Everything checks out, but the system keeps overloading." "Maybe it's a software glitch," another suggested. "We've already tested that," came the exasperated reply. "If we can't figure this out soon, the whole project could be delayed." David listened intently, his mind churning. He stood and approached the group, who glanced at him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Have you checked the auxiliary circuits?" David asked, his voice calm but firm. The engineers exchanged puzzled looks. "The auxiliary circuits," one of them repeated. "Why would that be the issue?" "It's not a common failure point," David acknowledged, "but I've seen similar issues in the past. If there's a surge or a fault in one of the auxiliary circuits, it could be overloading the main system." The engineers hesitated, unsure whether to trust the advice of someone they barely knew. Finally, one of them shrugged. "It's worth a shot," he said. Together, they began inspecting the auxiliary circuits. Within minutes, they discovered the problem. A minor fault that had gone unnoticed, but was causing significant instability. After making the necessary adjustments, they ran another test. The system stabilized, the overload issue resolved. The room erupted in cheers and relieved laughter. "How did you know?" one engineer asked, his tone a mix of admiration and disbelief. David smiled faintly. "Experience. Sometimes, the simplest solutions are the ones we overlook." Word of David's contribution spread quickly. Engineers who had been skeptical of him now sought his input, not just for technical challenges, but for guidance on approaching complex problems. David's presence brought a steadiness to the team, a reminder that innovation wasn't just about speed and cutting-edge tools, but also about patience and perspective. Over time, David began sharing stories from his NASA days. He recounted challenges he had faced, solutions born from trial and error, and the lessons he had learned about teamwork and perseverance. His stories captivated the younger engineers, who started to see him not as an outsider, but as a mentor. One day, a young engineer named Alex approached David. Alex was known for his confidence. Some might even call it arrogance, but today he seemed uncertain. "Mr. Harper," Alex began, "I wanted to thank you for what you've done for the team. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to think when you first got here, but you've proven me wrong." David chuckled. "I'm glad to hear that, Alex. What's on your mind?" Alex hesitated before speaking. "How do you do it? Stay calm under pressure, when everything's on the line. How do you keep your focus?" David's expression softened. "It's not always easy," he admitted, "but I've learned that pressure is a part of life. The key is to break the problem down into smaller pieces. Focus on what you can control, one step at a time. And remember, you're not alone. Trust your team." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Thanks, Mr. Harper. I'll keep that in mind." In the weeks that followed, David's influence continued to grow. The team's dynamics shifted, becoming more collaborative and focused. David's steady presence and willingness to share his knowledge transformed the way they approached challenges. Elon Musk took notice of the change. One evening, he stopped by the lab where David was working late. "David," Elon said, "I've been hearing great things about you. The team respects you, and it's clear you've made a significant impact. I just wanted to say thank you." David looked up, surprised but pleased. "Thank you, Elon. I'm just glad I can contribute." Elon smiled. "You're doing more than contributing. You're teaching us all something valuable. That experience and wisdom are just as important as innovation. We're lucky to have you." As Elon left, David sat back in his chair, a quiet sense of satisfaction washing over him. For the first time in years, he felt truly at home. He had proven his worth, not just to the team but to himself. And in doing so, he had found a renewed sense of purpose. Months had passed since David Harper joined SpaceX, and his presence had reshaped the dynamic of the engineering team. Though initially skeptical, the younger engineers now sought his guidance regularly, eager to learn from his deep well of experience. David's ability to merge practical engineering solutions with life lessons made him more than just a mentor. He became an inspiration. It was during one quiet evening, as David watched the team collaborate on a challenging module design, that an idea began to form. He reflected on the lessons he'd learned over his career. Not just technical skills, but the intangible values of teamwork, perseverance, and compassion. These, he realized, were just as crucial as any blueprint or circuit diagram. With that thought, David proposed a new initiative to Elon Musk, a training program for young engineers that would blend cutting-edge technology with timeless principles of problem-solving and collaboration. He named it Margaret's Path in honor of his late wife. "Margaret taught me that real success isn't measured by personal achievements," David explained to Elon. "It's about what we give to others and the legacy we leave behind. I want this program to reflect that." Elon, always a visionary, was immediately on board. "It's perfect, David," he said. "We're not just building spacecraft here. We're building the future, and that future needs to be rooted in values as much as innovation." The program launched within weeks. It was structured to teach not only advanced engineering concepts, but also the importance of empathy, patience, and resilience in overcoming challenges. David worked tirelessly, mentoring the first cohort of participants and sharing stories from his days at NASA and beyond. His anecdotes, filled with both triumphs and failures, captivated the young engineers, offering them lessons that no textbook could provide. One day, during a particularly engaging session, David shared a personal story about Margaret. "She used to tell me," he said, his voice tinged with emotion, "David, the stars are beautiful, but they're even brighter when you share them with someone you love." That's what this program is about. It's about sharing the light, not keeping it for yourself. The words resonated deeply, leaving an indelible mark on the participants. As the weeks turned into months, Margaret's path became a cornerstone of SpaceX's culture, fostering a sense of camaraderie and purpose among the team. The culmination of David's efforts came during the unveiling of a new spacecraft, a highly anticipated event that gathered the entire SpaceX team. The atmosphere in the large hangar was electric, filled with anticipation as engineers, technicians, and executives assembled to witness the reveal. A massive curtain concealed the spacecraft, and the air buzzed with speculation. Elon Musk took the stage, his charisma commanding the attention of the room. Today, he began, we celebrate not just a technological achievement, but the values that drive us forward. This spacecraft represents innovation, resilience, and the power of collaboration. But it also represents something more personal. He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd before landing on David. David Harper, would you join me up here? David hesitated, caught off guard, but the applause from the audience urged him forward. As he climbed the steps to the stage, Elon placed a hand on his shoulder. You've given us more than we ever expected, David. And today, we want to honor you and the person who inspired you. With a dramatic gesture, Elon signaled for the curtain to be drawn. The audience gasped as the spacecraft was revealed, its gleaming surface reflecting the hangar's bright lights. Etched in bold letters along the side was a single word, Margaret. David froze, his breath catching in his throat. The sight of his late wife's name adorning the spacecraft brought a wave of emotions crashing over him. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't speak. The applause and cheers faded into the background as he stared at the tribute, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the gesture. Elon's voice broke through the haze. David, this isn't just a spacecraft. It's a symbol of sacrifice, resilience, and the enduring impact of kindness. Your story and Margaret's legacy will inspire every mission this spacecraft undertakes. Tears welled in David's eyes as he stepped closer to the spacecraft, his trembling hand reaching out to touch the engraved name. Thank you, he managed to whisper, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for bringing her dream to life. In the days that followed, Margaret's path gained even greater recognition within SpaceX. Engineers and technicians alike embraced the program's philosophy, finding renewed purpose in their work. The spacecraft named Margaret became a beacon of inspiration, its name synonymous with the ideals of compassion and perseverance. David, though humbled by the tribute, remained focused on the future. Margaret always believed in the potential of people, he told the team during a training session. She believed that together, we could reach heights we never imagined. That's what we're doing here, under David's guidance. The engineers not only honed their technical skills, but also grew as individuals. The camaraderie within the team deepened, creating a culture that valued collaboration over competition and progress over ego. For David, the success of Margaret's path in the spacecraft that bore her name was more than professional achievement. It was a personal triumph, a way to honor the love and sacrifices that had shaped his life. And in doing so, he found a renewed sense of purpose, proving that even in the face of loss, it was possible to build something beautiful and lasting. David Harper sat alone in the quiet corner of the SpaceX cafeteria, the remnants of a half-eaten sandwich and a cooling cup of coffee before him. He had been at SpaceX for several months now, yet a familiar feeling of self-doubt lingered in the back of his mind. While the young engineers respected him for his experience and wisdom, he couldn't shake the thought that he might not fully belong in this world of cutting-edge technology and lightning-fast innovation. The whispers from his first days still echoed in his mind. Is he too old for this? Can he really keep up? Though those comments had been silenced by his contributions, David often questioned if he truly deserved the admiration and gratitude that now surrounded him. That evening, as the office buzzed with the energy of another long night of problem-solving, a young engineer named Alex approached David at his desk. Alex was known for his sharp intellect and relentless drive, but tonight, his confident demeanor seemed tempered by uncertainty. "Mr. Harper, do you have a moment?" Alex asked, his tone unusually hesitant. David looked up, offering a kind smile. Of course, Alex. What's on your mind? Alex pulled up a chair, running a hand through his tousled hair. I've been stuck on this subsystem for days, he admitted. Every solution I've tried seems to create more problems. The deadline's looming, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm not good enough to handle this. David leaned back in his chair, studying the younger man with a thoughtful expression. He could see the weight of pressure bearing down on Alex, a weight he himself had carried many times over the years. You know, David began, his voice steady and calm, that feeling you have right now, that's a good sign. Alex blinked, clearly puzzled. How can this be a good thing? David's gaze softened. Pressure is natural when you're doing something meaningful. It's a reminder that what you're working on matters. The key is not to let it paralyze you. Instead, let it drive you to break the problem down, piece by piece. Focus on what you can control, and remember that even small actions can lead to extraordinary outcomes. Alex absorbed the words, his brow furrowing in thought. So, you're saying, I shouldn't expect to have all the answers right away. David chuckled softly. Exactly. The greatest breakthroughs often come from persistence and teamwork. You're not in this alone, Alex. Trust your instincts, but also trust the people around you. Sometimes, a fresh perspective is all it takes to find the solution. For a moment, Alex sat in silence, his shoulders visibly relaxing as the tension began to ease. Thanks, Mr. Harper, he said finally, a small smile breaking through. That helps. A lot. David nodded, his own doubts momentarily forgotten in the satisfaction of helping a colleague. Anytime, Alex. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Word of David's mentorship continued to spread, and more engineers sought him out for advice. He became a steadying presence in the often chaotic environment of SpaceX, his calm demeanor and thoughtful insights offering a counterbalance to the high-stakes pressure of their work. One day, during a team meeting, a heated debate broke out over the design of a critical component. Voices rose as engineers argued passionately, each convinced that their approach was the best. David watched quietly for a moment before stepping in. All right, everyone, he said, his voice firm but kind. Let's take a step back. We all want the same thing here, a successful design that meets our goals. Instead of focusing on why someone else's idea won't work, let's figure out how we can combine our strengths to create the best solution. The room fell silent as the team processed his words. Gradually, the tension eased, and the discussion shifted to a more collaborative tone. By the end of the meeting, they had not only resolved the issue, but also gained a deeper respect for each other's perspectives. David's influence began to reshape the culture at SpaceX. The team's focus on collaboration and empathy grew stronger, fostering an environment where even the boldest ideas could be explored without fear of judgment. Engineers who had once been fiercely competitive now worked together seamlessly, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Elon Musk took notice. During a company-wide address, he highlighted David's contributions. David Harper has taught us an invaluable lesson, Elon said. Innovation isn't just about technology. It's about people. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels supported and valued, because that's when we do our best work. The applause that followed was loud and heartfelt, leaving David both humbled and grateful. Despite his earlier doubts, David found himself growing more confident in his role. The respect and trust of his colleagues rekindled a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He no longer questioned whether he belonged at SpaceX. He knew he did. Late one evening, as he reviewed a technical schematic in the quiet of his office, David reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of Margaret, her unwavering belief in him, and the path that had led him from the depths of loss to this new chapter of his life. He glanced at the framed photo of Margaret on his desk and smiled softly. "You were right, my love," he murmured. "There was still more for me to do." In that moment, David realized that the doubts he once carried had been replaced by something far more powerful: hope. And with that hope came the determination to keep moving forward, one meaningful step at a time. Years passed, and David Harper's impact on SpaceX grew into something larger than he could have imagined. Margaret's path had become a cornerstone of the company's culture, shaping young engineers into not only exceptional innovators, but also compassionate and thoughtful individuals. The program's guiding principles of perseverance, collaboration, and empathy transcended the walls of the SpaceX headquarters, inspiring initiatives in other industries as well. David's influence was deeply felt, but as he approached his late 70s, he knew it was time to step back. Officially retiring from SpaceX, David chose to spend his days giving back to the community. He often said, "The stars will always call, but the people here on Earth need us too." In his quiet retirement, David returned to the countryside where his journey with SpaceX had begun. He turned his modest home into a hub for small acts of kindness, repairing old appliances for neighbors, tutoring local students in science and math, and organizing donation drives for the homeless. His days were filled with simple yet meaningful gestures that mirrored the values he had always held dear. One autumn afternoon, as David tended to his small garden, a young boy from the neighborhood wandered up to him. The boy, no older than 10, watched David curiously as he worked. "Who are you?" the boy finally asked, his voice filled with innocent curiosity. David paused, wiping his hands on his jeans before crouching to the boy's eye level. He smiled gently, his weathered face lighting up with warmth. "Just someone who was once helped and now wants to help others," David replied. The boy tilted his head, considering the answer. "Did you help a lot of people?" David chuckled softly. "I tried. But, it's not about how many people you help. It's about doing what you can, whenever you can. Even the smallest acts of kindness can make a big difference." The boy nodded solemnly, as if David had just shared the most profound wisdom. Then, with a grin, he scampered off, leaving David to reflect on the simplicity of his own words. In that moment, he felt the quiet fulfillment that had come to define his life. Though retired, David's bond with SpaceX remained strong. On the anniversary of the Margaret's Path program, he was invited back to the headquarters for a celebration. Engineers, technicians, and executives gathered to honor the legacy of the program and the man who had inspired it. Elon Musk stood before the crowd, his expression uncharacteristically solemn, yet full of admiration. "Today, we celebrate not just a program, but a person who has left an indelible mark on all of us," he began. David Harper taught us that the future isn't just about reaching the stars. It's about the people who guide us there. Elon's words were met with resounding applause as David, humble but deeply moved, stepped up to the podium. His hands trembled slightly as he looked out at the faces of the people he had mentored, inspired, and worked alongside. "I've been fortunate to walk this path with all of you," David began, his voice steady despite the emotion that threatened to break through. Margaret always believed that the greatest journeys are not those we take alone, but those we share with others. She believed in the power of kindness and the strength of community. And seeing all of you here today, carrying those values forward, is the greatest honor I could ever receive. He paused, his gaze lifting to the large model of the spacecraft named Margaret that hung above the room. "This isn't just about technology. It's about leaving the world a little better than we found it. I hope that all of you will continue to carry that mission forward, not just in your work, but in your lives." The applause that followed was thunderous, filled with admiration and gratitude. David stepped down from the podium, his heart full. That evening, back at his countryside home, David sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The night sky stretched endlessly above him, glittering with stars that seemed to dance in the cool autumn air. He thought of Margaret, of the countless nights they had spent looking at the stars together and dreaming of what lay beyond. "You were right, Margaret," he murmured softly. "The stars are even brighter when you share them with someone you love." He felt her presence in the stillness, as though she were sitting beside him, her hand resting gently on his. A quiet peace settled over him, the fulfillment of a life well lived. David Harper's story became a testament to the enduring power of love, sacrifice, and kindness. The Margaret's Path program continued to flourish, shaping generations of engineers who carried its values into every corner of the world. Many who benefited from the program went on to create initiatives of their own, spreading the culture of empathy and collaboration far beyond SpaceX. In the small town where David lived, his acts of kindness left a lasting impact. Neighbors spoke of the old man who fixed broken appliances, mentored struggling students, and always had a kind word for everyone he met. To them, he was a quiet hero, a reminder that greatness is not always loud or grandiose. Sometimes, it's found in the small, everyday acts that make life a little brighter. As the years went by, David's name became synonymous with inspiration. Yet, for all the recognition and accolades, he remained humble, always insisting that he was just an ordinary man who had been given extraordinary opportunities. One clear night, under a sky filled with stars, David Harper closed his eyes for the last time, a gentle smile on his lips. His journey had come full circle, and his legacy, rooted in love, sacrifice, and kindness, lived on in the countless lives he had touched. The stars continued to shine, as if whispering the truth of his life, that even the smallest acts of kindness can light the way for generations to come. David Harper's story reminds us that no act of kindness is ever wasted, and even in our darkest moments, we can find the strength to inspire others. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story to spread its powerful message. Thank you for being part of this journey. Together, we can illuminate the world one story at a time.